So, Richard.
Hi, Shivani.
I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but as appraisers, and I think realtors tend to say this too, you guys as appraisers can be the bane of our existence.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and the bane is a light way to put it, I think. You hear much worse, but I always wondered, why is the appraisal the last thing done?
But it's not always.
It's mostly it is. I mean,
it's just so much hinges on it.
Right.
So
much
it feels like it.
Yeah, but again, if everybody had their own money and didn't have to borrow, then there wouldn't be a place for appraisers. So the difficulty is, obviously, as an appraiser, I have to meet my rules, not my rules, Fannie Mae underwriting guidelines, and perhaps FHA or VA, whatever, whomever I'm doing the appraisal for. But you have a willing borrower, you have a willing seller. I guess the only thing to hash out is how much is the home worth, and that's where I come in.
Yeah, but you're supposed to come in as an appraiser and give us an objective value.
True,
right?
Yeah.
But I found that appraisals can differ quite a bit depending on who appraises. So it can be a subjective thing.
Well, unfortunately, there's you have a different levels of licenses, different levels of competency. I've even heard of appraisers coming from either out of state or out of the area, not even having access to local MLS information, or not being able to provide the right data. And that's on the appraiser. We're supposed to be geographically competent, and we're supposed to know the market in which we work. So if an AMC or a lender chooses to go with an appraiser that charges a lesser fee because that AMC is already building in additional fees to your borrower's costs, then that's, again, it's on the AMC, because you as a lender don't have a choice.
Right, and I think that the average customer may not know what we're talking about when we say AMC, Appraisal Management Company.
Correct.
And not everybody knows that we used to, as lenders, used to be able to choose an appraiser based on their experience and know that this guy has repeatedly given us a fair and objective value. Let's order through him. And we don't have that ability anymore.
No, and when the market crashed in 2008, they really were struggling for a way to try and, I guess, make it uniform where everybody's on the same field. There were appraisers who were committing fraud at that point, appraisers who were being paid additional monies to hit a number, so to speak. Or bribed, yes. Yeah. And fortunately, those appraisers are no longer in the business. Now we have the Appraisal Management Company, which is a third-party system that randomly orders appraisals. I, as an appraiser, I get on their list, and then when you order an appraisal through your company, if I'm on your list, I might get it, or whomever is associated with that Appraisal Management Company. But again, the management companies, they're out to make money because they're the middleman. But the problem is, it's under the guise of consumer protection.
Under the guise of consumer protection.
It's costing the consumer more to be protected when some of the AMCs will do a little bit more thorough job going through the rules and regulations of the appraisal, so it's less of a headache or less liability for the lender themselves. But some of them just, will charge an additional $100 to $300 just to pick up the phone and call me. If there's something wrong with the appraisal,
that's like extortion.
Well, it's difficult because I obviously I'm on a lot of lists for appraisers on appraisal management companies. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. It's my choice to work with the good ones. It's my choice to not work with the bad ones. And the difficulty is the consumer, they don't know that if you go to this lender, they're going to be with that AMC, which is going to charge this or that. And inevitably, the liability is on me. So if something goes wrong with the appraisal or the process, or the house, or if it's something that I missed, I can be held financially responsible, not the AMC. So technically, the AMC is there as a third party, so I'm not being pressured or being held up.
But they're not absorbing any of your risk.
Right, but they don't have my E&O insurance, they don't have my liability. They're just there because the process should be random as opposed to me doing every appraisal for every lender.
Yeah. I mean, I think in theory, I could understand why they put this together. I just don't think that it's being executed or serving the purpose that it was initially set out to do when they put AMCs in place.
True, and a lot of governmental regulations are that way.
Yeah.
You know, it is better. I mean, we've seen it, I think, more through Fannie Mae underwriting guidelines. And in addition to the appraisal management companies, when they were set up, Fannie Mae has created some software with all of our appraisal software management companies to provide detailed analysis to Fannie Mae directly, so they store that in a database. So what happens when I do an appraisal is, let's say the purchase price is $300, I get the contract, I have the comps, and for some reason all the comps are at $290 and there are no sales at $300. Well, you know, all of my data is being monitored, whereas in the past an appraiser might put a view amenity down to artificially inflate that value to $300, just because that previous realtor or that previous loan officer said, if you don't come into value on this appraisal, we're not going to use you again. So there's a reason for the AMCs, but the Fannie Mae underwriting guidelines, they now monitor every appraisal done. So let's say that I use all those comps that came in at $290 and I come in at $300, making some obviously, you know, subjective opinion upgrade. Well, Fannie Mae's going to come back and say, you know, Richard, we have appraisals not only on all these comps, but we have all the comps that were used on these appraisals. So they have a pyramid of data, and they would say, no one else had made that $10,000 adjustment. Why did you do it?
So have you ever had that happen? Have you ever had them reach out to you for clarification?
I've had it done when it first started, because it was a learning process, because we have to go through condition and quality ratings, which can be subjective in certain areas, especially on older homes that have been updated or remodeled, or you know, how our peers are reporting as well. So I might say something is in C4 condition, which would be average condition, whereas all my peers might say, no, it's more like C3 because it's been slightly upgraded. So that little difference would trigger a letter from Fannie Mae to me, and then I would probably go take a class to make sure that I am reporting everything properly, and to be more consistent with my fellow peers.
Right.
And that gives Fannie Mae a lot more data that is less subjective. You know what I mean? It's just good data, and that's where you see a lot of, you know, that's where the bane of the existence of the appraiser, right? Because I didn't hit that number.
Right.
I came in at 290. It's only because it wasn't worth 300.
Which is that led to an important change in our market in 2018, because things were getting really crazy for a little while, and we saw sellers on this really high pedestal where they could list their house for whatever they wanted, get multiple offers, and people would go into contract for more than maybe even the listing price.
Correct.
And then we'd be sitting there waiting on the edge of our seats for the appraisal to come in.
Right.
And from our point of view, what we saw happening was more and more of them coming in, not drastically low, but like you're saying, like 10,000 low, 15,000 low.
Well, based on the data, because if you think about it, an appraisal is always historical. It can show you what has happened. Now, with the implementation of the 1004 MC report, that gives the lenders an idea of what's happening, what happened in the market from the beginning of the year or 12 months prior to today. So it shows either an increase, a decrease, or if it's stable. So a lender would then know, well, okay, the market is increasing and maybe the appraisal's a little bit lower, but again, some people were obviously over offering, because after getting their offers rejected time after time after time, they figured out the game was to over offer,
get the house into contract,
get it into contract, and then have it appraised, and at least go to the table to be able to negotiate for that price. Now, they could come up with money out of pocket. They could say, I'm not going to pay that, it's not worth it. There are different ways to do it, but if you've gone to the table 10 times and nobody's accepting your offer, you know, desperate times, desperate measures.
And I think that answers the question perfectly that I was going to ask you next, was that realtors on the other side, the listing agents, would be saying, who are you to devalue this if I have someone willing to pay this much for it?
That's true.
And I think your point speaks to that, because it's not necessarily that they really were willing to pay that much. It was a negotiation tool to get your house off the market,
right,
so that we could really talk about what it's worth.
and they're willing to borrow that. And you know, if you look at lending in today's world, they're not borrowing $10,000 more. Their monthly payments $4 more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that doesn't translate to the borrower who just wants a house because there was nothing available.
And I think that it's to you guys' credit for having done that, because we saw our market get a little more healthy in December of just last year, because sellers had to get off their pedestal. They couldn't list their property for such exorbitant prices because people weren't going to overpay for what it was worth. And now I think it's not anything bad that we're seeing happening in the Reno market. We're just seeing it get towards more of a healthy place where homes are selling for what they're worth.
It's healthier because it's kind of boring, you know, 3% as opposed to, we were so artificially underwater for so long because we were hit so hard. We were so high and then so low. So you saw a lot of people making capital investments, flipping homes, turning a good profit, more of those companies coming into town, more people moving here with all the jobs and everything else. And so, you know, our prices have always been a little bit higher than I would think for as big of a community that we have. But there is a tipping point with rising interest rates, and then you know, all of our new home builders finally coming to the market with their product as well. So
and helping with the
yeah,
inventory
it's been a combination of a lot of things, and I think most of it has to do with the fact that appraisers are being monitored, and most of the bad appraisers that were doing things that were unethical are probably out of the business by now. So hopefully that way it lends more credibility to our what we're doing. And you know, like you said, you can get 10 appraisers and get 10 different numbers. It's just a matter of how their data, you know,
how they came to that number.
Yeah, exactly.
So overall, would you say that you think the regulations have been for the better?
Some of the regulations. Obviously, the pendulum goes so far the other way. I think, I know when I started back in '95, you know, you would feel pressure to hit numbers, you know, because you wanted to get more work. Now, some of those numbers, whether, you know, $1,000 here, $2,000, no big deal in the whole scheme of things. That's how you would think about it. But when the market started taking off, and you know, you saw closings of homes that every day was another 5,000 here, 5,000 there. I'm just reporting these numbers, and I'm going, how can they?
It's kind of scary.
Yeah, how can they go up that fast?
Yeah.
So the AMCs, while they do protect me and insulate me from either over-aggressive agents or over-aggressive lenders, they do.
Aggressive lenders?
Yeah, not you, of course, but. They also, you know, the good ones, they don't charge, you know, $200, $300, $400. They charge a reasonable rate, and they do a reasonable amount of work. So overall, I think it's been for the good of the market.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to talk.
Thanks for having me again, Shivani. It's good to see you.